Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Weekending. This time round, we are going to focus on the world of real estate and art during the pandemic. According to real estate consultants Jones Long LaSalle Home Buyer Preference Survey, 50% of consumers above the age of 35 are considering buying a new house by January 2021. To tell us the reason behind this optimism, we have with us the Managing Director for Residential Services at Jones Long LaSalle, Mr. Siva Krishnan. Mr. Krishnan, what's the reason behind such positive news? According to your study, 91% of consumers rather buy than rent at this point of time.
What we're witnessing in the last 3-4 months is one of the asset classes in the real estate which is doing relatively well as residential asset class. So housing has picked up to a great extent in some of the cities, especially the IT and information technology enabled services cities like Bangalore, Chennai, Hyderabad, Pune. And very interestingly, the very important aspect of buying a property is the housing loan rate of interest and the property pricing. And I can tell you this is the first time we are witnessing in the last 15-20 years where we are seeing an affordable synergy, a synergy between the property pricing and the housing loan rate of interest.
Mr. Krishnan, we've heard things like the job losses, the salary cuts, and your study indicates that 50% of the consumers above the age of 35 years want to buy a new home by January 2021. So both these thoughts don't match.
So if you really critically look at the points, why about 35-year-old the customer group are willing to look at property? Work from home, again, I'm talking about information and enabled services. So if you look at it, work from home has become a pattern. Structurally, you will see about 15 to 20% of the workforce working from home as we move forward. There are challenges for these customers. Data speed is a challenge. Dedicated workspace is a challenge. The multi-generational family is a challenge. So this is bound to create a lot of factor for them in the current situation. And India is not a country where you see a lot of nuclear families. We stay as a family. So it's important that with work from home picking up, they would like to have their own space. They look to have their own study room.
Well, that spells great news for architects and interior designers. We have with us architect Martin Khosla, who seems to agree. Martin, how is your work panning out during the pandemic?
Well, it's been unpredictable, to say the least. I think when we went into lockdown, we were all bracing ourselves for the worst. We anticipated that there's going to be a huge reduction in the amount of work, or that we're going to look at projects that are going to be paused for a while. What was interesting and unexpected for us, though, was that the residential projects that we were working on, which were individual homes or even refurbishments of existing homes, substantial ones, they were unaffected by the slowdown. So we found that clients wanted to continue working on those projects. While we found a substantial slowdown in our institutional and corporate work. Not just that, what was even more interesting was that during the lockdown, we got more inquiries for residential work.
A lot of the migrant workers who are the laborers at most construction sites have gone home and projects have slowed down. Are you facing that?
Yes, I think the projects of ours, and in this case, the residential projects that we were talking about that are continuing construction, are finding that work is considerably slower. There is availability of workmen for the site is definitely considerably down. Also, it's just difficult. I think movement across the country at this point is difficult. It's hard for contractors to get the workforce to the site. But people are managing much more with local resources. What the implication of that is it's longer time, and I think there's a cost implication to that as well.
Thank you so much, Mr. Khosla. Now let's focus on the future. How will the pandemic impact the way we live, work, shop and socialize. We get some answers from Ambrish Arora, design principal at Studio Lotus, one of the country's leading architectural design practices. Ambrish, look into the crystal ball. What does it say? How are the buildings going to change? Our offices, our malls, the movie theatres, and what happens to the existing ones?
Well, I'm not Nostradamus, but I will hazard a guess. The pandemic has very clearly brought to the fore what technology cannot replace when it comes to spaces. We have a need for social space that's tactile and physical. We need our physical interaction, that's one. Secondly, we need a connection to nature. I think these two are quite evident, and these will have a direct impact on the way we design our spaces, whether they are our workspaces, whether they are our social spaces, whether they are hotels. Most studies show that outdoor spaces are the safest. That in turn kind of makes it very clear that our social spaces need to be expanded, are kind of unfettered by vehicles, by traffic. So all these high street spaces, and if I were to take an example of Delhi, all the markets need to be pedestrianized, cars need to be moved out, and people need to be brought to the forefront. I think that's one. If you were to extend that thought into malls, I think malls need to be reconceptualized. How can they be more kind of naturally ventilated? How do they get connected to the outdoors a lot more strongly? There's some serious thinking that will need to happen on that front. When it comes to our living spaces and office spaces, I think we can extend the same thought. We will focus on what's essential. So I see homes becoming clutter-free. I see the connection of the inside and the outside being a lot more important. People will become a lot more tolerant of temperature variances and kind of learn to find comfort at kind of higher thresholds of temperature difference. Offices would look to minimize air-conditioned spaces and also create a lot of our circulation spaces. That goes for hotels too.
You have offices, malls, movie theatres. What happens to the existing buildings?
I think it'll be a combination of engineering and redesign. So I see a lot more focus on introducing fresh air systems, and devices to sanitize these spaces, reduction of densities. I would imagine. I mean, these are really, writing. This is really writing on the wall. If we are really to have people come back, but at some level, we might even need to. In some areas, like in the case of movie theaters, maybe reconceptualized the way entertainment is delivered.
You designed the Ras Hotel in Jodhpur, which is pretty much an open kind of a space. It's not in a building. Going ahead, do you see that being the norm?
I think definitely it must and should, both from an environmental perspective and I would say a hygiene perspective, become a desirable. It is really a reconceptualization of the courtyard typology, which is embedded in, and it's in our ethos, and it was with reason that these courtyard buildings had been conceptualized. So yes, wherever possible, I see a big move towards that. I see a minimizing of travel. As a result, I think business hotels will get more hit. Leisure travel, then, however, hopefully we'll kind of see a rebound. And in terms of leisure hotels, a move towards more, again, hotels and properties that are more connected to the outdoors, which allow for distancing, which allow for larger spaces and a connection with the outdoors. They would tend to do, my sense is they would tend to do better rather than sealed in boxes.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Time now for a break. When we come back, we get you an insight on how the world of art has responded to the pandemic. Don't change the channel. Welcome back to Weekending. This week, we focus on how the world of real estate and art has reacted to the pandemic. Art through history has been the reflection of various world events. Let's find out more as we speak to Roshni Vadera Kapoor, director of Vadera Art Gallery, and Jay Danani, an art collector and director at the Art Vault. What's the future of the art market? According to a study by KPMG that came out in 2017, the Indian art market was valued at 14.6 billion rupees. What was that figure before the pandemic hit us, and where do you see it going?
Ambika, I think that figure would have probably obviously gone up by a certain percentage in 2018 and 2019. But this year, I mean, I can at least speak for the domestic Indian market. It's extremely healthy. People are continuing to buy. Auctions are doing really well. Yesterday, Christie's auction was extremely successful. So obviously, I don't think there's as much volume anymore because there are not as many auctions, not as many physical art fairs. But the collectors are continuing to buy at a very healthy pace, and overall, it's continuing to look positive.
Jay, you're an art collector and you have one of the biggest storing facilities in the country for other people's artworks. Is it filling up currently?
I do. I think that the gallerists, auction houses have found really great ways to keep their collector base engaged. And during this time, that's what you want. You want to be engaged. You want to be looking out in a world bigger than your own. And I think that's also why the market has stayed very buoyant during these times. And I think that we're gonna see that through towards the end of the year, which will culminate in the Kochi Biennale, which they have just released the first list of artists yesterday. So I think the Biennale years are always great years for the market. There's a lot of buzz, there's a lot of excitement, and I think that we'll see that through.
Roshni, talking about the Kochi Biennale and other art events that are happening, how has the art world adapted to the pandemic?
So it's actually been a really interesting time, Ambika. The last couple of months has actually seen the art world come together like never before. Whether it was our foundation's initiative of raising funds for the migrant workers, where artists, collectors, galleries, everyone came together to raise funds. A wonderful initiative called In Touch, where 15 galleries have come together in an unprecedented manner for a commercial initiative, and we are promoting each other's programs and works.
Jay, according to you, which are some of the interesting art initiatives in India and internationally?
Artists have enabled people to come into their studios, to show them how they create work, really open dialogue, being asked them questions. I think social media has been extremely instrumental in that. Courses, there have been a plethora of online courses that have opened for people to take to really learn about their passions. And museums have thrown open their doors digitally and said, come on in, experience what we have. They've put their entire collections online.
Are people buying more art, keeping in mind that a lot of people might be building offices in their homes, so an artwork or a sculpture always makes the office a more appealing space?
So what's actually been incredible, Ambika, is that usually, I have to be honest, June, it tends to be a pretty slow month for the art market, especially domestically. So everyone sort of moves to Europe, and there's of course the Indian Art Week that happens in London. So there's a little bit of activity there, or there's the Basel Fair. But domestically, it's a very slow month. I mean, we have never had business the way we've had in June in India. Everyone is home, everyone's looking at their walls, planning their spaces. Suddenly everyone has a lot more time, as Jay said, to actually engage on a deeper level, right? And so we've had a plethora of new collectors who've actually come in asking questions. Initiatives like In Touch have, it's so easy to just go online, look at works, contact people. Everyone has made it easier to contact each other digitally, right? So all of that has actually led to a lot more activity in the Indian art world in the last couple of months.
Historically speaking, how has the art world reacted to world incidents like war and pandemic?
Artists play this very unique role, and that role changes over time. But I think overall what we can say is that they create something that words cannot do. And I think if you look at an example like, say, Picasso's Guernica, painted in 1937, it was created to commemorate the bombing of Guernica, a town in Basque Country, by Nazi Germany, a very, very dark time. That painting was painted in 1937. It was exhibited in 1937 at the Paris International Exhibition. It was taken all around the world. And, it brought light to the Spanish Civil War. It's one of the most famous paintings by art critics around the world to commemorate, to talk about an anti-war painting. Until today, it's one of the most visited paintings in Madrid. So I think what happens during these times is that the art that's created is always timely, it's poignant, and it stands the test of time because it captures something that words cannot capture.
Does the language of art get impacted by world incidents?
I think that it's too early to say that there'll be a new vocabulary in art, because I think the artists right now are responding in their own verbiage and their own style. But what I do see is that certain trends are going to come out of this. One of them being like cross-digital collaborations. So because an artist in India could be working with an artist in Germany and creating something absolutely incredible, because it's the first time globally that they're all experiencing this, but in their very own way.
Roshni, do you think people will enter your gallery after the pandemic, or will they just say we will see it all online?
Ambika, you'll be surprised. We opened the gallery by appointment a couple of months ago. We have multiple requests by people who are wanting to come to the gallery because they need a break. And they obviously feel that a gallery is not a crowded space. They should, it's very safe for them to come. So people are actually dying to get out there and experience art in person. I don't think that experience of looking at an artwork physically can be replaced. But as such, yes, of course, this year, we are all saving a lot of carbon footprints by not flying around the world for biennales and for art fairs. But if you ask me, I miss it. I can't wait to get on a flight and go for an art fair or, visit a biennale or see my collectors abroad in person. So, I feel like, when the time is right, everyone is going to be back.
Just to add to Roshni's thought, that I think, yes, people are very excited to go back to museums and to go back to gallery spaces and to interact with artworks. But I think it must be said how incredible the art world has, embraced the digital space, and very, very quickly. Last week, the Yokohama Triennale opened with 67 different artists and groups from around the world participating. The artistic directors of that are a South Asian group called the Rax Media Collective. And it's a mix between an online platform and physical spaces. And I think that's incredible, in this time to open a Triennale in Japan. And I think, the world is looking at this as a real model and saying, wow, they did it. And, and I think these type of exhibitions can be done. And it's going to really, really also make artists think about how their artworks are viewed, how their artworks are engaged with. And I think we're going to see some very exciting things coming out of this space.
Amazing. Now, you mentioned the Kochi Biennale. Will it happen online or physically in Kochi?
I had a really great meeting with the Kochi team yesterday, and they are going ahead. 12th December is the opening date. As of now, they have no plans of postponing or anything like that. They're going full force into fundraising. I think that whether it's the Kochi Biennale in December or the India Art Fair in February, these are two of India's biggest events in the art space. I think that they are very sort of aware of the challenges during this time, and I'm assuming, or rather, I've had conversations, so I know that there will be social distancing protocols in place. They'll probably have to limit the number of visitors who can come in every day. So it's not like, we were discussing during the meeting for Kochi yesterday, that it's not like Saturday and Sunday will be as crowded as normally they would, because they will still have to limit the number of people who can visit per hour.
Amazing. I hope to have some appam with you in Kochi in December. Thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
With that, it's a wrap on this edition of Weekending. Thank you so much for watching and have an incredible week. Goodbye.